Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off.
Blast off on another epic episode of the Hyper Anomalous Esoteric Research Organization podcast, also known as Hero Paranormal, broadcasting from the base at La Madre Mountain, just south of Area 51. My name is Ryan, the paranormal pontificator of the airwaves, bringing you an information-packed episode today. Really quick, if you haven't had a chance to head on over to heroparanormal.com, please do. If you go over there for the price of a boutique cup of coffee a month, you get all of the content behind the paywall, the whole enchilada, and there's a lot of it. Also, please subscribe to Hero Paranormal on YouTube by liking, subscribing, and sharing on YouTube. It helps me break through the algorithm of control. The shadow ban is real. And today we're going to get into something else that's very real. We have a paranormal power couple on the podcast today. LaLa Bright and Bob McGwier are a UFO paranormal power couple who were thrown together by the phenomenon. She is a psychic medium and experiencer. He is a scientist and engineer with internationally recognized credentials. They will speak of their work together. LaLa's earliest paranormal recollection is of her finding her neighbor's grave in a Baltimore cemetery with thousands of graves by hearing the deceased neighbor calling her. This was age 5, and she couldn't read. Her father, a Reiki practitioner, experiencer, and energy worker, recognized her instantly. She now speaks to the deceased for those who need it. She speaks to aliens for those who need it. She calls energy beings to her home daily and gets them to respond intelligently. Bob has outfitted their home with technology to enable LaLa's abilities to be documented and shown to the world. They are truly a power couple, bonded first through LaLa reading Bob's deceased mother, then business, then a close relationship, and they now live together, loving their new and exciting life. Bob served the U.S. intelligence community for 27 years as a scientist and was a chief scientist of Hume Center for National Security and Technology at Virginia Tech for 11 years. He then retired and became a UFO paranormal investigator as an avocation. I'm looking forward to speaking to these people. They talk the talk, they walk the walk, and they have the proof. LaLa Bright and Bob McGwier, welcome to the Hero Paranormal Podcast.
Welcome to us and to you, Ryan. We're happy to be here with you.
Thank you very much.
I am super excited. You guys have an amazing story. Very compelling. Can you give listeners that are not familiar with you an explanation? I went into a little bit in the introduction, but just a little explanation of how you met and how these groundbreaking abilities came to fruition. And Bob, how you got involved with all this.
That we can do. I'll let her go first because she's been having this since she was born.
How we met, well, I've always been psychic. My father was psychic. But a few years ago, I lost my parents and boyfriend. And so I decided with all the pain, I would turn it into something positive and stop hiding who I was and help people heal when they lost somebody. And so In the meantime, I would fall asleep listening to a podcast late at night. It was from midnight till 3 a.m. And I didn't know who they were, but it was interesting things I'm into, paranormal and stuff. And one night, Bob was on there. And I got that usual feeling Spirit gives me when I need to contact the person to give them a message. And so I did, and later, soon after, his mom passed. And so I read for him. And he was skeptical at first, and then he realized I was real. And we became friends, and then eventually business people, and then eventually we became boyfriend and girlfriend and moved in together. And then every possible paranormal, otherworldly thing you could imagine has happened.
All of it. Okay, so she reached out to me after seeing me with Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio, because I do the Science Bob segment once a month. Mm-hmm. So she said, your mother's passing, and when you need me, I can give you a reading. I'm not after money. I don't want anything. I just feel the need to help. So I was skeptical, and I just went off to see my mother. She had been put on hospice, and so that invoked her advance directive. So I knew the end was near. But while I was there, my mother would occasionally rally, become conscious, and she would talk to our dead relatives. So given what LaLa said to me and my mother's behavior during her passing, she was like talking to them as if they were in the room. I knew I needed to reach out to LaLa. So we got through her passing, got through the funeral. I came home, and of course I was grieving, and so one day I reached out to LaLa and told her, yes, I'd like to try this reading, but I'm skeptical, but I'm perfectly willing to listen, and I'm a person that has an open mind. I believe in data. Okay. So she started doing the reading, and it was clear in just a few minutes that she was talking to my mother. She told me, my mother told her things that I can't believe my mother told her, because only my mother and I knew them. And then she told me things that my mother knew, but I didn't know. And I didn't know until like the next 2 weeks that everything LaLa told me was right, because my brothers and I got together, talked about it, and reached out to friends and relatives and confirmed everything my mother told her that none of us knew. At the end of the reading, she said, there's a little lady walking up, and she has such a thick Southern accent that I can't understand her. But she's emphatic and jumping up and down and keeps saying one word, Tweety, Tweety. And you could tell she was embarrassed to say the word out loud. I had to pull it out of her. But it was unbelievable, Ryan. I was 1 year old, and my grandmother would keep me, and she called me Sweetie, and I couldn't say Sweetie, so I called her Tweety. And I was the oldest, so Tweety became the grandmother's name for the McGwiers. And so it's just the entire reading just blew me away. So I told her that I was into all sorts of things and had begun studying consciousness. I was into UFOs, aliens, and I had gotten interested in the paranormal, having been to a haunted house and had a thing happen. Okay, so we started talking, and it quickly became apparent that things she thought were dreams were, in fact, recovering memories of being abducted, because I had heard these stories of these abductions from friends in the UFO field many times. And I knew from Bud Hopkins and John Mack and reading their stuff that there were millions of people in the United States who were being abducted. So anyway, she let her tell you about some of her abductions, which
yeah, I'd love to hear about them.
So, I've had a lot of missing time. I remember one time I was sitting with my friend outside Dunkin' Donuts in my car, and we kept seeing fireballs go past the car, which kind of freaked us out. And so we decided, let's get the heck out of here, and we started driving. I was going to drop her off, and it was nighttime, and there was a huge cloud over the road, and this helicopter flew over and shined its spotlight into the cloud, and all of a sudden I saw inside was hiding this massive craft. I mean, it was low. I could see detail, like the underbelly of it, it looked like these huge pipes were just intertwining with each other. And the pipes were as wide as the body of the helicopter. I mean, this thing was massive. And so I drove under it, and I don't remember driving home. I don't remember getting home. I don't remember until I woke up the next day. And so another thing happened over in Florida where my parents retired before they passed. I was helping my dad with the trash, and right over his roof, they were almost seemed like they were going to touch it. It was really close. They were really big orange orbs. And there was 5 of them, and they went into the shape of a V. And I looked at it, and I said, Dad, do you see that? And he looks up right at him, and real robotic, he said no, and he turned around and walked in the house. And that was unlike him, because we were best friends, and he was really into this stuff. He would have gotten excited and said, oh, my God, you know. And I looked back at them, and one by one they disappeared, and I don't remember anything else after that. And me and him never spoke about it, which was also unusual. But I remember it, you know, what I would call visitation dreams. I remember waking up on a table and beings being around me and them doing surgery on me. I do have an implant in my leg that's been there over 20 years. I mean, there's just lots of stuff.
This is so amazing. I love this stuff. And Bob, this is a real find. You are a numbers guy, a science guy, a data guy, very well organized. And it seems, you know, a question I have to ask both of you is psychic ability a natural born gift, or is it more of a trainable skill in your opinion?
Both.
Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So I work for the government in the intelligence community, worked for the intelligence community for 27 years, and retired to teach people who were going into the intelligence community or working for DOD. As a faculty member at Virginia Tech, I was the chief scientist for the Hume Center for National Security and Technology, and it was named after a big donor. His name was Ted Humes, and he knew me and my partner because he was the director of science and technology of the CIA before he retired. So I went there, but I was still connected to the intelligence community. We had a secure facility with email and secure telephone connections. And so I would hear stuff. I began hearing rumors in 2017, 2016 about UFO this and UFO that, because rumor intelligence inside the community is pretty amazing. So I started looking at YouTube videos. I found Grant Cameron and Richard Dolan. Grant Cameron triggered my remembering missing time when I was 19 and things I'd seen in the yard and missing time while I was out in the yard looking at the sky with my telescope where I would think I'd been out there half an hour or 15 minutes, and my mother said I'd been out there for hours to come inside. So I had some weird stuff, but at the missing time event where I had an hour and a half of missing time my first year in college, that was kind of a big deal, and the last thing I remember until I became till the 2010s. Okay, so what I remember is 2 weeks after I had the missing time, I quit the school I was in, dropped out of the major I was in, and went to another school that specialized in math and engineering, and I became what I am today. I have a PhD in applied mathematics, I have a degree in engineering, and I've started 2 engineering companies based on intellectual property I developed. So, and then I've taught others how to do the kind of things I did in multiple fields while I was the chief scientist at the Hume Center at Virginia Tech. So, again, associated with Richard Dolan, I saw him do a 4-part interview with Chris Bledsoe. So I asked Chris, could I come and visit? And he had just lost his favorite guy scientist from NASA who had died in an accident. So he was kind of wondering if I might be a replacement. So I went over 4 weeks after I contacted him, and we spent 3 days, him telling me everything that ever happened to him in his life with this stuff. And we decided to go out on the 4th night because the sky finally became clear, and we had 2 40-foot orbs, massive things, right above the trees, fly right over our head. And his son Ryan was out there, and Ryan has a video of one of the orbs. Then we saw these flash bulbs in the trees, and I remember saying to myself, I wish they would come out of the trees so I could see them. And they obliged. They came right out of the trees and went up into the air, and I saw what looked like 100 flash bulbs going off. Just looked like flash bulbs going off in the sky. So that tweaked my science bones anyway, but then there was this purple aura, which looked like the surface of a lake with waves on it, or smoke, right above the treetops. And Chris had bouts of rheumatoid arthritis, and he couldn't hold his neck up and look at the sky. So the purple aura disappeared. And the moment the purple aura disappeared, Chris said, okay, they're gone for the evening. We can go back inside the house, without him looking up. And it started by him saying, hey, let's go outside. I think they're here. And they were. Okay, so I just knew that Chris had a connection. And so I left there after several days with Chris and his wife and family, and went home, and a hitchhiker followed me home. I had airports of water. I began to see orbs and craft and other things, but I just thought this was associated with having been around Chris Bledsoe, and they're checking me out or whatever. So that went on for a while, and in 2020, when my mother passed, I was seeing stuff inside my house, white orb in the living room where I was sitting and watching television, crafts caught on my security cameras in triangle form right in my front yard. So LaLa and I just started talking and getting to know each other, and finally we decided we would try to do some stuff together and fell in love and moved in together. When we moved in here, we immediately began having poltergeist activity. We put up security cameras, and they called a poltergeist activity on the one we had aimed at the front door. It has a night vision, black and white, with infrared at night, and if there's enough light, it turns to color mode. So at 2 or 2:30 in the morning, the lights turn on. Not us. We didn't turn on the lights. Something turned on the lights, but on the camera, you can hear the switch click, and then the relays click in the camera where it swaps from infrared mode to daytime mode, so it's color. And we could see something pass in front of the camera. And just as the something passed in front of the camera, an electronic voice phenomenon was recorded on the camera. And it was the voice of LaLa's boyfriend, who was deceased and was the father of her son. And it said hello and the son's name. Okay, clear, beautifully recorded voice. And so we knew we had stuff going on here. We put up a bunch of cameras, and we've had all sorts of stuff caught on these cameras.
Amazing, Bob. And, you don't have to convince me when it comes to the Bledsoes. I'm a friend of Ryan Bledsoe's. I think their family's amazing. And yes, they definitely have a connection. This is fascinating. You guys are like a paranormal power couple. You have a way to embrace the phenomenon that is very unique. I find that, usually people can't wrap their heads around this stuff, but you as a couple seem to be able to bridge the gap between skeptics who can analyze but don't experience, and believers who have the experiences but lack the ability to analyze. You guys are kind of the best of both worlds. And I have a question for LaLa. You've been in a lot of situations that are extremely psychic. My question is, do you believe that this sixth sense, to call it, this psychic intuition, where the mind, the body, the spirit all comes together, is this something that is an intuitive skill, and has it gotten better over time with you?
I do. Well, I think everyone has it too. So it's like this. Everybody can cook, right? But some people are good at microwaving, and some people are good at being a chef. That's kind of how I see it. I was always born seeing things, hearing things, but it scared me, and so I pushed it away. Now, when I lost my family and I got with Bob, my fear subsided, and it's gotten stronger. So I think what's important is a good support team is very important, because this is different. A lot of people are made fun of. And if you push your powers away, it can make you very depressed. So it's kind of a mixed bag situation. But I do think people that don't have it that much can work on it. I do.
but it certainly helps that when we instrumented the house, she suddenly, look, she thought for years that she was crazy, and people told her she was crazy. Her mother didn't want to hear it, but look, when we instrumented the house and she began going through the evidence herself and seeing the things she knew would be there and had all this validation, I guarantee you her abilities exploded because she no longer doubted herself.
Yeah, the only person I had growing up was my dad, and he tried to teach me certain things. But, of course, I'd always go, oh, whatever, Dad, yeah, I get it, you know. But it's nice now. Like he said, everything I would feel or hear, we catch on video. And it is, first of all, it's addictive, but it's validating.
She's turned into, she's become obsessed with the evidence.
And the more I look into these beings, the more of them show up. It's really cool.
It does seem as if it is addictive. And I only say that because once you make contact, you know, your perspective changes. Once you can't deny the effect, the ability, and the reality of it, like you said, I mean, it's like the floodgates open, right? And that brings me to my next question. We are living in amazing times with this UFO whistleblower subcommittee, and it seems as if humanity is kind of getting prepared to embrace one of the most exciting moments in human history. What are your thoughts about the whistleblowers and what's taking place in Washington?
Okay, so at SCU in Huntsville in 2020, June of 2020, I actually met David Grush. I didn't know he was the whistleblower at the time, but I was sitting with Linda Thompson and Melinda Leslie, and he was at the table right in front of us. And then the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency detailee for UAP to Space Force was in Huntsville, and they wanted to contact me and see if they could get me to help them with satellite surveillance from the company Hawkeye 360, which I had founded. Unfortunately, just as I arrived there, my security clearance timed out because I hadn't used it in 2 years. So I had to tell them, and so I really didn't get a chance to know any of them any better because I couldn't go inside and hear their classified stuff they wanted me to work on. So I met him, and he seemed a nice guy. I met Ryan Graves. I met him. I don't know Fravor, but, you know, you get the idea. These are kind of the people I would run with when I was inside the intelligence community. And as the thing I want to point out to people, during Grush's testimony before the House, a subcommittee, he told people what I already knew to be true, but it's his story to tell. But he told the world that he gave the presidential daily briefing workup and delivery from the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. No jerk gets to go and brief the President of the United States. So we're in amazing times.
I agree, and it does seem that we're finding out the way the world works. I mean, a lot of this stuff is hidden, and there's volumes of knowledge back there, and I think people are shocked. A lot of people have been screaming hoax, but they're just not informed about everything. They're not aware of the situation, and I think there is, in fact, a lot of disinformation, so you can't blame them. That brings me to my next question. You had mentioned that you had an experience with the hitchhiker effect, something which has now fairly gone a little, you know, there's still people that don't understand it, but it's gone fairly mainstream. And recently there is something that is coming out called interference syndrome, similar to Havana syndrome. Have you guys come across that at all?
Well, I think that's what Gary Nolan was investigating with Kip, with the guy from the CIA, the doctor. Sorry, I'm having a senior moment.
You're absolutely right, Bob. No, you're absolutely right.
He was asked to investigate that stuff with the government, and that's what led him to the discovery of the method of scanning the brain. And he found out that experiencers and extremely intelligent people have these extra connections between two areas of the brain, and he's published all of that. So it's kind of amazing how this all happened.
It is. It is amazing. And yeah, it's fascinating that, like LaLa said, once you're interacting with these intelligences, these UFOs, and have these psychic abilities, it seems as if this sentient energy form grows, and the antenna, if you want to call it that, seems to grow with it. And LaLa, let me ask you this. For people that are having a hard time but want to understand, how do you get people to embrace the phenomenon?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say just for a short moment in life, let go of everything you've been taught and just look up at the sky and watch and talk to them. So it's almost like, I guess you could say, praying. If you ask for them to show up, it might take a few weeks, days, or months, but you're going to start seeing things. And they're everywhere, but they hide really well. I know that sounds weird, but they are like masters at hiding. And once they realize that you have good intentions, they do come out. This whole world that we live in is nothing we've been taught whatsoever. I mean, they just have to have an open mind, and it takes time and patience. That's all.
I'm really glad that you explained that the world is not exactly what it seems, because as these professionals and experts are mapping the human brain and the human genome and a bunch of other scientific events that trying to understand this, it's leading us to believe that we may live inside of a simulation of sorts.
I believe it.
What are your thoughts on that?
So I absolutely believe that, especially since I know about the work of Donald Hoffman, who is a cognitive scientist at the University of California in Irvine. He's proved a mathematical theory based on the game theory of evolution that we have evolved to take in the data that's coming from our senses, and our brain interprets it into what we call our perceptions, but it's not reflective of reality. He's proven that that is a disadvantage, that we are advantaged through evolution if we perceive what is good for us in terms of enhancing our ability to survive as a species. So we, in fact, live in an illusion, and that has been proven mathematically by a cognitive scientist, Donald Hoffman. And the guy has dozens of videos on YouTube. It's very interesting work.
Very, very interesting. And this is the type of information that really gets me going, because it seems like humanity is extremely reliant on technologies which have sort of resulted in us downloading, or I should say uploading, ourselves onto our computers. Most people work in some way, shape, or form at this point, or at least play or interact with computers during their lives. And, we need them for convenience and to buy things and security and safety. My question is, as we connect more and more to these devices, do you believe that this merge is far more advanced and possibly complex? And is it a good or a bad thing?
So, of course, all technology has the potential to be good or bad. And so what will come of it is what we make of it. So the Oppenheimer helped split the atom and make an atomic bomb. But atomic energy is used to, nuclear stuff is used to cure people of cancer. And it's used to run reactors which don't put out greenhouse gases. So nuclear can be good. But it would be a damn bad day if we started firing nuclear weapons at each other. So technology is not inherently evil or bad. Now, right now, we are turning off our ability to survey our environment. We sit at our computers, and that's our interface to the world. We don't go outside and look at the sky. We don't much go outside and walk through and look at the woods and enjoy nature. we spend half the day looking at our phones. And the cognitive and neuroscientists have already shown that the stuff that's going on these phones, I'll give you a perfect example. TikTok is known to run an algorithm that is addictive. And that's what they're doing. They release these endorphins for what they're doing and the way they've done it, and they optimize it using machine learning, and it addicts you to it. So it can be bad if used badly, but it can be good. So here would be a great thing. How would you like to have instantaneous access to all the data of the world? And that's coming. Neuralink is taking the first steps to having a safe implant that you can hook through your skull to your brain and even hide it under your skin so you can't even see it, and you'll have Google direct to your brain.
Absolutely amazing. It's so true. And kind of switching gears a little bit as we're about halfway through here, I don't want to let some things fall by the wayside, and I want to get into the supernatural and creatures. And, I've been looking into etymology, the study and origins of words, and I'm finding that the old English word bug comes from, the word bugga or goblin. And, this is a supernatural creature. So let's get into not only what you've encountered, what kind of creatures have you had interactions with? Either one of you.
All right. Well, I now believe in fairies. I never, ever believed in fairies before, even though I believe in everything else. We have a video of Bob walking out the front door at night, and something with it's tiny, a human body and wings flew around him so quick, we would have never noticed it. It just looked like a bug, but I always get a feeling, so I slow the video down. It was a human body with wings. I couldn't believe it. That happened once. I mean, we've had...
But we noticed it out back on different cameras, and I put flowers out there, and they took them.
Yeah. We've had crafts. We've had these rods, skyfish. We've had this orb came down. This is on video. We show everybody. An orb came down on our back porch, shape-shifted into a human, but still light. It moved our camera over a couple inches it aimed at the neighbor's roof, and then it went back into an orb and flew off, and then like a few weeks later, they now light up that neighbor's roofs. They light it up with their craft. I mean, it's amazing. They do this almost every night now.
Yep, and then we see now we've at least a dozen times in the last 2 months we have captured on our equipment a UFO. It has no visible means of propulsion, and you can see lights and details on it. It's a structured craft, and it's really clear since all always around us and in the front or the back of the house and getting on our cameras that it's some kind of surveillance. We're being observed. And then we regularly go out and sit on our deck and just look at the sky and see what we can see. So we've gotten some amazing videos with my low light level camera of dozens of craft doing crazy stuff in the sky. That's number one. And number two, we were sitting out there trying to get other things because we've seen what I'll call spirit smoke and alien-looking creatures walking right up to us in that smoke. And LaLa got that on camera from the thing 6 feet in front of us. Okay.
We've gotten pictures of the grid that everybody talks about.
Oh, yeah.
That was amazing.
Yeah, amazing. So I have this really expensive digital single-lens reflex camera, digital camera with $3,000 lens on it. So LaLa's taking these pictures, or I do, and suddenly it looks like a defect. There's this grid is on it, but we've gotten it on other cameras as well. So that's pretty strange. And so the night before, a couple of nights ago.
The wormhole.
Yeah.
There's something coming
out. Go ahead.
In the grid, there's clear looking wormholes and then darker wormholes. and there was something coming out of one of the wormholes.
And it's a structured craft.
Yeah, good.
So we were sitting on the back porch 2 or 3 nights ago, and we were doing our thing. She had the camera. She was taking pictures, trying to get smoke or whatever, and beings. And we noticed that our security cameras had one clip where you could see her doing the flash, and then the next clip was completely silent. You couldn't hear us do anything. There was no flashes from the camera, but a helicopter flew over our head, and it was loud.
With a spotlight.
It was a spotlight pointed right at us, and then the next clip, she's back to talking with me and taking pictures with the camera. We have no memory at all of the helicopter flying right over our head, and it's way too loud to sleep through. And we were sitting on the deck awake until we weren't.
Wow.
I have one more I wanted to share.
Go for it.
We have video of a large portal opening up in our backyard in the sky, and it's a hole that's dark. It starts opening up slowly, and this bright light kind of swings around the outside of the hole, and then it shoots out the center of it, and then it disappears. That's my favorite.
Well, I love that one, but there's also another one. That there's this orb, which is in our backyard, between our neighbor's house, their backyard, and our backyard. It's because we are in a subdivision. So the orb has a clear alien face in it. It's just amazing.
That's so cool. And, you guys are wandering into the neck of the woods that I feel most at home with. This is exactly the type of stuff that I like to talk about. Now, I also live in a subdivision, but as you may know, I own a ranch that is in the Uinta Basin of Utah and shares a fence line with the old Bigelow Ranch. And you guys mentioned something that really, really stood out to me. And that is the fact that you've seen what seem to be life forms in the sky. And I can't agree more with you. My question is, do you believe that these may be plasma-based aeroforms, or what could they be?
Well, I'm going to tell you, so she and I regularly go out to this field near our home. So you can't see any of the homes in this development. They're completely surrounded by woods, and the closest road to any house in here is a mile. So we're just surrounded by wood, but there's a field. I don't know how, so we go and park in the field. And we're looking up at the sky in the truck, and 4 oriole look like fish swimming through the sky, and they're glowing. So she takes her camera up and takes a picture, and you can see at least 4 of those glowing beings, and they flew right over the truck. And that evidence is right in our collection of evidence that anybody can go look at, because we have it open to the public. And then a little later that evening, I was looking at her and talking to her, and we were exclaiming about how it's crazy all this was, and I saw her side of the truck and the ground outside her door light up like somebody turned on a floodlight. So I threw my camera out my window and took a picture, and there's this gigantic white orb that's also in the pictures that anybody can see. I mean, anybody can go look at our evidence.
This is what is so cool, is you guys have the documentation to back this up and the answers to all the tough questions. And I've been researching a lot of neuroscience lately. I'm not sure why, but I've found a Dr. Robert Frisina and his colleagues who worked for the, I believe, the Institute of the Deaf in Rochester. And they were explaining how girls and women hear better than men. And they were wondering and seeming to imply that women have other extrasensory perceptions, as we've all people have often joked about women's intuition. And that seems to be the case with you as a couple. I find that really interesting that LaLa has such an amazing function in how she can psychically engage with these entities. LaLa, when you guys see these things in the sky, do you have immediate feelings about them, or you view them differently than Bob does?
Yeah, I can, well, before they show up, I can feel that I'm being watched, so that's number one. And then when I do see them, I can sense whether they're good intentions or not the best intentions. So far, 99% of the time we've had good intentions.
So these security cameras we have outside our house, they have speakers on them, so you can yell at the robbers. So she gets on her phone, she whispers into the phone and says, "Okay, we're out here in the field. You guys come now." And we will have gotten nothing for 20 minutes, but she'll do that, and then we'll get all sorts of stuff. So she is clearly communicating, and they're responding intelligently.
So fascinating. And while we're talking about this amazing intuition and your abilities, LaLa, I have to ask you, many people and psychics have discussed the possibility of something they call the Akashic Records, which are energetic libraries. And it's a place where events throughout time are recorded and stored. My question is, have you ever been able to engage with or access anything that you could substantiate as possibly being along those lines?
Well, not much, but my dad actually used to do that, and he would tell me about it. And he said it was amazing. He could see past lives and everything. And I just, one time with Deb Shakti, we did a regression. And so I got to see some past lives that way. But I've actually never tried. I'd like to, actually.
Mm-hmm. So I think for her, since she's a remote viewer and I have listened to her do astral projection with amazing results, I think she could astrally project a remote view and see past.
Yeah, amazing. I'm sure you have the ability, undoubtedly. And I wanted to kind of get into the possibility or any knowledge that you have about nefarious, compartmentalized agendas headed by possibly large corporations worldwide. Bob, you probably have more insight into this. Have you come across any of these secretive groups or organizations which seem to have, well, bad intentions?
Okay, so I have not directly on what you're talking about, which is these psychic things or the UFO retrievals and reverse engineering, but I have in fact worked on multiple waived, unacknowledged special access programs, and that is as much as I'm allowed to tell you about them. I can't tell you who the work was for. I can't tell you what the work was. I can't tell you where it was. I can't tell you who else was in it, or I'll go to jail. Mm-hmm. So this is how they keep all that stuff trapped. They keep the teams very, very small, and they highly restrict them. And there is no telephone or computer connection from inside the little skiff that's just for that waived, unacknowledged special access program that can communicate outside the box. So it's just completely isolated from the world when you're working on it. And you are meant to leave everything you see and know at the door when you leave every day.
Absolutely. Fair enough. And I wanted to ask you both, you've had a lot of ongoing contact. We'll call it contact. Have you ever seen or witnessed what is known as slag coming off any of the craft, or possibly exotic metals dropping to the ground?
What is slag?
It looks like molten metal falling to the ground.
Yep.
So Chris Bledsoe showed me some molten metal that had fallen to the ground from a craft that went over his head.
No, but you know what I have noticed that's interesting to me?
Mm-hmm.
We've had a few different types shaped crafts come in, but two of them had these round, really bright balls connected on a metal arm almost. And one had it showed up in the daylight, and it had one below, one above attached to it, and it actually had purple on the craft, which was interesting. And then the other one was months before at night. This thing was as big as like a city. It looks like a huge rib cage. And it had the same ball attached to some metal arm below it. And I want to know what this thing is. Why are certain large ones using it? What's it for?
Yeah, and this thing we got, and it's in our evidence. People can go look at it, and I can tell you, I've done the science and the calculations and all that. That showed the thing was a long way away. Yet it took well over 10,000 square pixels in the image. So the thing was clear, defined, and a long way away, which means it was huge.
It came back a couple of nights in a different angle, because I was like, I want to learn more about you. And so it came back a different night at a different angle.
Different rotation. It had rotated 90 degrees. You could tell it was the same craft, but it had rotated. It had yawed, and it came back 2.5 weeks later.
Yep.
Wow, it really makes you realize the intelligence behind some of these craft and phenomena. It seems as if they do have something they're doing, although we don't always know what it is. And my next question is kind of, it's a tough one because I know a lot of people are split on this. And, we have the non-computerized, non-electronic or technical variety of psychic intuition and abilities. But on another level, it seems like humans as a collective are recognizing and discovering artificial intelligence. Is this, in your opinion, possibly non-human intelligence that is just finding its way through the machine? Or what is it that we are dealing with artificial intelligence?
Well, I know Bob has an opinion, but for me, I think what comes to visit us, I know I've called to us. I think they've been following me most of my life, and I feel they're their own type of living being. I don't think they're spirit. I think they're like us, but just different.
And some of the tales I've heard about from experiencers and abductees, and with things flying around like the Tic Tac, those things to me are clearly artificially intelligence run. And some of these things that come, like you'll be abducted, and you'll have the tall beings which interact with you and boss the little beings around. And the little beings, I think, are cybernetic organisms or robots. Mm-hmm. So this is my intuition and my feeling from the description of the behavior of all the entities in the room. So it just seems like we're seeing both living beings and artificial intelligence and robots.
Absolutely. And it does seem like these items obviously have intelligence, these entities. And this brings me to the humanity of it all. As many believe, humans have what's known as a soul. And there has been a lot of researchers who have purported that we have the technology, which I believe we do, to clone and make artificial humans or entities. My question is, when it comes to these types of entities, would these also have a spirit and a soul or be considered part of the greater whole? Or have you guys come across anyone who's given you any evidence or intelligence regarding this type of artificial, entity or intelligence?
I have not.
I think I know souls can jump into vessels, which are bodies, mm-hmm. and maybe that might happen, but I think what they're creating, most of them won't ever have a soul. I think they'll be completely different. I am a little bit afraid of what they could become, honestly. So
I'm fond of the term Deb's Shakti uses for our bodies. Souls are forever. You can't create or destroy the energy that makes up the soul. So it leaves and rejoins the universal energy of the universal consciousness and comes off of it, and then that energy can inhabit a body. So that sounds like what happens when the Eastern philosophies and religions talk about reincarnation. So the person's body dies, but their soul and energy goes on, and then it decides after it's read its Akashic record and learned a bit about what it did right and wrong, it can be sent back to another body. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is just, I'm going to tell you, this is really strange to me, and I cannot get past the fact that almost all of these entities have 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, 2 arms, and 2 legs.
Right.
Why are all these biologies that have come from all sorts of different places humanoid in form? Mm-hmm. It just doesn't make sense that we aren't all connected.
Agreed. It's like the template has been placed, right? It's pretty fascinating. And I'm really glad that you went there and talked about and brought up the idea of reincarnation, because this is something that fascinates me, the way that many ancient religions, ancient mystery schools, obviously other colleges of thought believe in reincarnation. What are your thoughts on the reincarnation possibility?
I just know that energy can't be created or destroyed. Now, when the body passes, the second law of thermodynamics, when the laws of thermodynamics say the body is going to decompose, it's going to become random and return to nature. But I think the energy that was in the body, if there's some method of organizing it, like it returns to the universal consciousness or heaven or nirvana or wherever, it returns from the body to some place, central place, and does what it does, and before it decides, the universal consciousness decides whether, or God, or the Great Spirit, or whatever, decides what it should do next. Sounds to me like there's a contract, and you go on and you do a thing.
I'd like to share one thing real quick.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't really sure about souls growing up, but when my father passed, I went to visit him at the funeral home, and I was the only one in there. And I was just talking to him, saying what I had to say, and all of a sudden the lights in the room flickered, and the brightest little round light appeared over him. It was bright as the sun. And all of a sudden it shot into his nostril. I know that sounds weird, but it's just what happened.
Yeah.
And I knew he was telling me that's his soul, that's his energy. He's still alive, he's still there, he's just different. And that's what I tell my son. I say, Daddy's still here, he's just different. I do believe they live on,
Yeah, and I believe
that... and we have evidence with the electronic voice phenomenon, and his picture's up on our dresser in the room, and she has one of these little cat balls, and it regularly gets set off by motion. And we're not doing it.
It lights up.
It lights up.
That is super relevant to this, because, just the ability for these energies and these energy frequencies to have a way to manifest through things like EVP. I find that an exciting way for them to message or communicate. And I wanted to ask about another form of communication, and that's the telepathic form and contact with extraterrestrials. LaLa, you have had that ability. What messages, if any, can you share with us? I know it's a big question.
The only thing they've really said is how we all have to stop pretty much butting heads. They're here to help us, but they also need our help. I'm assuming that means we all come together as one, because I think, in my opinion, that we are all bombarded with things to get angry about, so that we just don't pay attention to the bigger picture. And they're here for the bigger picture, except they can't just come out right now, so they pick certain people to do a soft disclosure, and we're one of the people.
And that was telepathically communicated to her by entities, which we took a picture of on our back deck, and you'll see this blue smoke and this entity inside the blue smoke. And it manifested later when she was alone and talked to her in her head and said, we need you to work on soft disclosure. You two have some role to play. And then later on, humanity, we're going to help, and then humanity's going to help us.
I think you guys have a amazing role to play. Just in talking to you, it's obvious to me that you have a lot of personal power and a template for getting it across, and that's really cool. I think that's a lovely message to kind of dial into these higher dimensions and help them as well. And something you've mentioned, Bob, that's really, you've mentioned it a couple of times, and I can really relate to it, is this this smoke that can become things. I've witnessed at this ranch in Utah that I own called Space Wolf Research and other places. I have witnessed what is what I can only call smoke that becomes very, very obviously tangible objects that you can then decipher exactly what they are. What do you think these are? We hear in the Middle East of, the jinn, and I oftentimes relate it to like the smokeless fire that ancient cultures describe. What are your thoughts about this, Bob? Because you've obviously interacted with this phenomenon.
I think that's manifested when they come through a portal. I think that's one of the things it is. So let LaLa tell you about the one we got on our cameras in the front yard and all that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which one?
The one that the body. That came
my
through.
goodness. Okay, good. I like this one. So this being, it looked like a little gray alien face. The grays, which I'd never seen up close before like that. We were in our home sleeping. It appeared and stared at our camera. We saw the face and the torso, and then there was this fog and smoke around it that you were talking about. And a lot of them have that around them. And the next morning I woke up and I had a really dark triangle-shaped bruise on my arm. And I know I didn't hit anything. Like I tell everybody, after my family passed, I got anxiety really bad and very hyper aware of my body and my health and all that stuff. So this is something I would have noticed right away.
That and the bruise, which is, again, this is available in our evidence for everybody to look at. Both the entity on the camera and the bruise, which resulted from what I believe was an abduction, because I didn't wake up, and I woke up very late that morning for me. So I think she was abducted and worked on. So the bruise is several days old, even though it didn't exist the day before, because it had already begun to discolor.
Wow.
I think the smoke is a way to help them maneuver around.
Or camouflage, or
right.
It covers a portal.
Yep.
But I think they come through a portal near us all the time.
Absolutely.
Amazing, amazing. I can't agree more. You both are a wealth of knowledge, and either one of you would have been a home run of a podcast individually, but together, wow, what a blessing, guys. I'm so happy I got to talk to you. Can you tell listeners where they can keep up with your work and follow all the amazing things that you have going on?
Okay, do you have a presence on social media or a web page or something like that?
Sure.
So I'll send you all these links on Messenger, and you can send them out. But the way to get hold of LaLa to talk about your aliens or entities or whatever is LaLa Bright, LaLaBright, LLC.com. And you can get a reading from her. And it doesn't matter whether it's aliens or spirit or deceased or whatever. She can handle these readings. Mm-hmm. And me, I'm on Twitter as Bob McGwier _N4HY. That's my amateur radio call sign. And I'm Bob McGwier on Facebook. She's LaLa Bright on Facebook. And our evidence is on Facebook. But look, Brian, I'll send you all those links immediately after we get off here. And you can put them wherever you want to, because we are showing this evidence to whoever wants to see it.
This is great, guys. Thank you so much. I think that you are both helping humanity and just discussing these very few topics with you. I'm completely convinced that your research and experience is far beyond that of the regular person, and that people need to wake up to the new realities which are taking place. Thanks so much, and I hope you have a great one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Those are the real deal right there. Two of the most authentic, real, and psychically connected and powerful couples I've ever come across. When they are described as a paranormal power couple, that is an understatement. These two are absolutely magnificent. They deeply impacted me with so many of their statements, theories, and the conversation went exactly the places I wanted it to go, which is pretty wild. And talk about a wealth of knowledge. Definitely check them out. You can find LaLa at lalabrightllc.com. You can find Bob at Twitter, as well as Facebook and other social media platforms. I will post links to that in the description. And until next time, keep your eyes to the skies, feet on the ground, but don't forget to take a look around.
Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine. Blast off, blast off.